And I have the pleasure to introduce Haro Cümbüşyan. Haro is a collector of contemporary art based in London, and he's also the founding director of Collectorspace, a non-profit initiative that aims to open up critical discussions on collecting art and to create a variety of reference points for new generations of collectors in emerging art markets. Collectorspace launched its first location in Istanbul in September 2011, so it's a very recent initiative, and I'm delighted that we're going to hear about it now. Thank you, Haro.
Thank you, Charles, for the kind introduction. I feel a bit awkward, actually, to take stage after Levent. I don't know what he did to offend Salt or Fanabi team to be paired with me. Clearly, our qualifications are not on par. Maybe this is just a demonstration of how collectors get into position of power with no apparent qualification. But in any case, I'm thrilled to be here, and I would like to thank both the SALT team and Fanabi team for putting together this symposium. I think that it is about time to talk about collectors, since what they do has more and more of an impact on what happens in the rest of the art world. And that's basically the motivation for having started Collectorspace. As Charles mentioned, it is a very young initiative. We started in New York in 2009, became a nonprofit, tax-exempt institution, and our premise was to open up private collections to the public. And our first space opened in Istanbul last September. I'll tell you what we do in our space. Basically, yes, we do open up private collections. We bring one single artwork from a collection. It's that one. This is our space. And we take that artwork as our starting point to discuss the entire collection and collecting in general. In this context, we want to talk about, we show a video basically of the collector as well, because we want to hear what they, how they approach collecting, what their passion is, and how they go about this activity. And also we want to show the artworks in context, how they live with the art at their home. This is an example of that video where the artwork is in the front exhibition space, and you can also see how it is presented at home. And we think that context is quite important when thinking about private collections. This is basically a way of simulating private collection visits. And I believe that seeing multiple collections is one of the best ways of finding your own way in collecting. And that's probably one of the reasons why we chose Istanbul as the place, as the first place for collector space rather than New York or London. Because as it was in the text of the symposium, it seems like there wasn't that much activity that happened in the 20th century in terms of collecting in Istanbul, with exceptions such that Levent mentioned. And even though now there is a lot of activity in the art market, there are lots of galleries opening and people really are interested in collecting, there is a lack of reference points because both on the public and private side, there aren't that many established collections that people can go to and really understand what a collection is about, and how a collection can be read and how it can be built. That lack of reference point is difficult to overcome because it takes time to build collections. As again, we have heard about one example here, and also in different places. Obviously, there are individuals and institutions who are running this marathon as a 100-meter sprint, and I'm sure that they'll cover a lot of ground, very quickly. But I'm hoping that they will have the stamina to actually, finish the race, if there is a finish. It is difficult to compress the time and build a collection. So the thought was we would bring collections from all around the world and create these reference points. And we want to create as many different reference points as possible. So not just show a thematic collection or a time-based collection or a medium-based collection, but show multiple of those so that people can fine-tune their own vision. Having seen other examples, I think it is pretty relevant. I'll talk a little bit about the properties of the location of our space and how it relates to the conceptual model of collector space. First of all, we are in our space used to be part of a living area of a private residence. And we still have the original floors, and even the entrance, you have to go through the building, through the main door, and then enter our space. So it has that feel of a private space. But on the other hand, it is open on two sides completely with glass doors, glass walls. So, in terms of voyeurism, it's very open to the outside. So it basically plays with the tension between private and public, and that is a subject that is core to what we are doing. We are trying to open the private to the public. We are trying to maybe not break the walls, but make the wall a little bit more porous. So conceptually, it works quite well for us. The second property is its size. It's a whopping 20 square meters. And clearly it puts a lot of limitations on what we can do. Especially we have actually been quite ambitious and separated that into two areas, one exhibition area and a resource center in the back. So we really don't have that much space to do much. But basically it led us to the idea of showing a single artwork. At first, Silvia Kuali brought up this idea. She's an advisor to Collectorspace, and I wasn't really ready for the concept, because I think of a collection as something that tells a story. It's an entity of itself, and one artwork is the opposite of it. A singleton is definitely not the same thing as looking at a collection. How can we talk about a collection if we don't look at it as an entity? But as we thought about it, actually it liberated us quite a bit from the constraints of showing the entire collection or part of it, a selection, because that's always a challenge, not just logistically. How do you bring a whole collection from whatever in London to Istanbul? And also, how do you select the works if you are not bringing all 1,200 artworks in that collection? In a different way, obviously from a curatorial perspective, it's not the first or only example of this being done, and there are many good ways of dealing with it. And Özge, our program manager, can talk about it from the curatorial perspective much better than I can. So please, do stop by at our space and chat with her. But for me, it makes sense, because even though we talk about collections and that's our focus, and that's where my interest is, and we can, critically analyze it or open up different issues about it. At the end, the reason why we built these collections is still the artwork. It's we want to respect the primacy of that concept. And I think Charles used the word autonomous. When you put a single artwork in a space, I mean, that's basically becomes the focus, and basically you remind people and yourself that that's what you are doing actually. You are interested in the artwork, and then you build stories around it. You maybe create different readings. So for me, it is an interesting way of showing collections. Obviously, with the video that we have and with our publication, we do go into the other artworks and how they relate to the one that we show. So it hopefully does create a connection in that way. And the third property of our space is our location. And I personally like it quite a bit because it's on the edge of Taksim Square. That's one of the most central locations maybe in the world. I can say that. So basically, even though we have a tiny space, and we can fit maybe 1 or 2 visitors inside, it actually looks on Taksim Square, and the Taksim Square looks back. And if you think about that whole area, it's probably the biggest one of the biggest exhibition spaces in the world. So basically, the exhibitions that we make take the form of a public art project. So we think about it that way as well. And this is a little bit interesting and something that we can talk about. Maybe private collections, when they open up to the public, have more of a tendency to open up all the way and not have this museum-like structure that protects the artworks from the public. We see that at Arter as well. The people can look in, and even if you are not visiting Arter, you walk by and it grabs you somehow. Our space has a similar property that we can touch people who have no intention of visiting a museum or no possibility of visiting a museum. We have a dolmuş stand in front of us, and people line up, and we provide entertainment for the people, and some of them interact with us, and that's a huge delight. So I want to talk about the objectives that we set as that we put on paper when we applied for the nonprofit status. And the first one was bringing significant artworks in private collections to public view, which is a quite noble, objective. It's difficult to, say that we don't want to do that, and it's probably the reason why we got the tax exempt status. But if you think about it, it's there are more established and maybe more efficient ways of getting artworks from private collections to the public. And one example is temporary exhibitions in public institutions where they take artworks on loan and show to the public. Us doing it one by one at every exhibition is probably not going to change the world in terms of how much access people will get to artworks in private collections. Even though I have to make this comment, when I visit private collections, I'm amazed how much great art is away from public view, especially in contemporary art. I mean, when we go back over time, I think that that problem goes away as a lot of artworks that are really significant enter museum collections, but in terms of current production, typically they are in private hands, and the quicker they get into public circulation, I think the happier artists would be, I would assume, because then they can fulfill the objective of creating it. So basically, even though I think that we are not really making a big difference in terms of opening up things that are in private hands and don't get seen by the public, first of all, by talking about it and by doing it symbolically, we want to encourage more private collectors to open up their collections and at least loan to institutions. And secondly, because we have this public art type of situation, I think we can reach, even with the single artwork, we can reach a lot of people who typically wouldn't see art on their daily lives, and maybe they can follow up and go to Istanbul Modern or SALT or any of the other institutions that are more of a destination. Our second objective was opening up private collections to critical review, which was my main interest, because there is no academic requirement, there is no testing, no licensing requirement, no apprenticeship for becoming a collector. And another key thing that is missing is that objective feedback mechanism. It really doesn't exist. So it's very difficult for a collector to get better since they don't know what they are not doing right. So this is something that is missing for a good reason, because it's awfully awkward to do it. And I'm not sure we will be able to do it, but we at least want to talk about the concept of critically thinking about a private collection. We kind of want to challenge the idea that the collector can do whatever they want because they own the artworks. I think they do have a responsibility towards the artworks, towards the artists, and the society at large. So we want to talk about that, and also in our publication that we have envisioned from the beginning, that we'll talk about each presentation, we are commissioning independent writers to write about the collection. And our first issue will come out shortly, I'm hoping, and I know it's late. It's about 9 months after we presented the collection, and I can tell you that it's similar to pregnancy, childbirth process in more than one way, not just the duration, but hopefully it will happen. And the third, more pedantic reason why we were doing Collectorspace was to provide resources to new generations of collectors, because even in New York or London, in major art centers, it's not that easy to find your way in terms of the infrastructure of collecting. It's a lot of fun to visit galleries and do some shopping, but then you have to worry about storage and transportation and insurance, at some point conservation. So there are lots of things that come with building a collection, and we haven't really found a source that is not commercially driven and unbiased, where people can go and find out about how to go about it. And we think that maybe the most important resource for a collector is reading material. Can Elgiz, who will speak tomorrow, said something at an interview at the Frieze Art Fair last year, I believe. And I really appreciated the comment. He said, before becoming an art collector, somebody needs to be a book collector. And I think that really emphasizes the importance of reading, which is not done as much, I would think, not among the collector group at large. I'm obviously with exceptions. I don't I'm generalizing here, but even in major art centers where people speak English, art forum is probably browsed through for the pictures. Not a lot of people read the articles, and in a place like Istanbul, it's even more difficult to read those articles because it's not the the mother tongue of people. And even though most collectors are fluent in spoken English, it's a different thing to read something quite heavy in a foreign language. So one of our objectives is to translate some of the relevant articles that are that we think collectors might want to read. It's obviously we don't want to turn into a translation bureau, but we are trying to create the resource in terms of reading material. We have a little library where we keep books on collections and books on collecting specifically, and we keep recent issues of magazines so that people can come and browse through or borrow. Obviously, there are libraries in Istanbul. Istanbul Modern has a great library. Salt Galata has a great library, and actually, I want to move into that vault. But my concern is that those libraries are more, often frequented by artists and art professionals, and not that much by collectors. Collectors are more likely to be found in the restaurants, which are also extremely nice. And maybe that's the problem. They are tempted to go to the restaurant a little bit too much. So in our library, we don't have a chic cafe. So it's just for the books. That's where I'll end.